The New Orleans Saints run game has failed Alvin Kamara over the course of the past 3 seasons, but that all changes in 2024. We got all that and a little bit of lanyap for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? I'm your host, Ross Jackson, New Orleans native, your New Orleans Saints expert and credentialed member of the media covering those New Orleans Saints as a senior writer and reporter over at Saints News Network. And on today's episode of Locked On Saints, we're taking a look at how the incoming wide zone offense that New Orleans is set to deploy in 2024 will impact the running backs. We did quarterbacks yesterday. We also highlighted the passing game as a whole as an overview on Friday, run game as a whole, an overview on Thursday. Today, though, we're going to get into the specifics for the running backs. We're going to be taking a look at some of the NFL draft prospect running backs who are a good fit for the system. We're also going to take a look at why slot receivers matter in the run game. And we're going to start all of this off and kick off the show with a look at Alvin Kamara. The New Orleans Saints have not done Alvin Kamara any justice with their run game and their run scheme over the course of the past few years, but that is set to change here in 2024. And if it doesn't, there will be some major questions to answer in the fallout of the season. We appreciate you very much, as always, making Locked On Saints your first listen of the day, and for being an everydayer here on the show, which is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode of Locked On Saints is brought to you by our friends at LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs is to help you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. So post your job for free today at linkedin.com/lockedon NFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. The New Orleans Saints have not done Alvin Kamara justice with their run scheme over the course of the past 3 years, and that is set to change here in 2024. And if it doesn't, there'll be some big time questions to answer at the end of the season. So I want to take a look at how this new offense impacts the running backs, but I want to start off with the guy that, let's just face it, matters the most in Alvin Kamara. I've seen people talk about how Alvin Kamara is done, seen people talk about how Alvin Kamara is washed, all those other things. I could not disagree more. This is clearly still a guy that can go out there, make plays, and get things done. The issue is the way that he's been utilized over the course of the past 3 seasons. Now, if you were to look at the raw numbers around Alvin Kamara last year, you wouldn't necessarily see anything out of the ordinary. He ran more zone run concepts than he ran gap or man run concepts in each of the last 3 seasons. 118 to 58, 133 to 77, 134 to 92. But it's not just about whether or not you're running in a zone scheme or running in a man scheme. It's where you're running. It's where where those play calls are being sent, right? Where Alvin Kamara is being asked to run. And that's where a lot of things changed in 2021 when he became the bell cow back and therefore had to run a lot more up the middle. Well, had to run a lot more all told, but also had to run a lot more up the middle than he had been running towards the outside. And Pete Carmichael picked that right up in 2022 and 2023 and continued to do that. Now, I've seen people make the argument before that the New Orleans Saints might have started to run towards the inside because blocking on the outside was a little bit weak. Now, you can make that argument in 2023, but you can't make that argument necessarily in 2021, where the run game should have been there for New Orleans, but just simply wasn't. Now, of course, there were a lot of different things that happened in that 2021 season. Remember how weird all of that was. Of course, there's a lot of different contextual things, but I'm just looking at play calling. I'm looking at the game plan, and I'm looking at how this impacts Alvin Kamara. With the incoming addition of Klint Kubiaks as a New Orleans Saints offensive coordinator, you're going to see a lot more wide zone, right? Wide zone is the offensive scheme that the New Orleans Saints wanted to get their hands on. And there are different versions of that wide zone offense that exist all around, whether you're Mike McDaniel, Kyle Shanahan, whether you're Matt LaFleur, whether you're Bobby Slowick, it all looks like a variation on a theme rather than one single straight line around that says this is what the offense is. So make no mistake about it, Klint Kubiaks will have his version of that offense that needs to be better than the 2021 version of the offense that he had with Minnesota, which also was still doing a little bit of the Kevin Stefanski steakhouse menu offense where they had 6 really good plays and they just ran it with some tweaks and variations depending upon did you want to block and how you wanted to block and whose responsibilities it was, where the trap blocks came from, all these other things. Like there was just a lot of these different pieces that were a part of that. But for this offense, what we're expecting above all else is a change in the run game, which is something that the New Orleans Saints absolutely want to get done. And this is going to benefit Alvin Kamara massively because it's going to ask him to run to the outside quite a bit. That's the bread and butter, the crown jewel, if you will, of the wide zone offense. It's getting your running backs running towards the outside, getting outside the tackle, getting outside the tight end on either side, whether it's, you can go to the weak side of it where you've got a tight end on the right side, but you can still run to the weak side outside of the tackle. You could run to the strong side outside the tight end or between the tight end and tackle. Either one, doesn't matter. But in any case, you're getting them out in space. And of course, there's inside zone concepts as well, which is what we've seen a lot of for Alvin Kamara. Let's take a look back in 2023, just this past season. We saw 72 rushes go to either the left or the right of the center, right up the middle, right? Then you look at the gap in between the guard and tackle, which right there, we're looking at either right guard or left guard. And then you see 27 to the left guard. You see another 16 to the right guard. But going towards the outside of the tackle, you saw 17 to one side, 12 to one side, 23 to one side, 13 to the other side when it came to running outside the tight end. Those are the two numbers that I want to focus on. The numbers of runs that went outside the tight end, that's or going to the 9 or 8, depending upon how different offenses scheme up and communicate and list out all of their rushing attacks. So if we look at that, that's 36 runs to the outside. So twice as often as he was being asked to run the quintessential outside zone stuff, he was running up the middle on either side of the center. And that's in a year where he ran more zone run than he ran more gap scheme, right? Let's take a look back at 2018, for instance, and then get a comparison on that. So we look to the middle right and the middle left, which is either side of the center, and we're looking at 23 and 35. So what is that? We're looking at 58 runs right there going to the outside or to either side of the center. But then we look at outside the left tight end, 23 runs according to Pro Football Focus. We look to the outside of the right tight end, that's 48 going over towards that outside. So we're seeing over, 71 going towards that outside. So it's like the numbers flipped from 2018 to 2023. So just because somebody runs behind more of a zone scheme more often than a run or a man blocking run scheme doesn't mean that he's being asked to attack the field where he does his best work. And the one thing we know about Alvin Kamara, and we have seen and has been proven over and over and over again, even within these last 3 years, if you get him out in space, if you get him operating outside of the tackle box and not where all the congestion is, running right up the middle into an 8-man box, that's where he is able to make a big time difference in the game. It gives him time to watch things develop, utilize his vision, utilize his patience, pick a gap and attack that gap. And of course, the wide zone schemes that are employed when it comes to blocking are just impressively better and set things up a little bit more as well. So it should also help this offensive line with some new additions, ideally, continue to be able to bolster that area of their game, which then helps to bolster Alvin Kamara's game. Now, make no mistake about it, there will still be gap scheme. There will still be man runs that are involved in this offense. That's where Jamaal Williams comes in. That becomes very, very important because you have to have both. And having a guy like Kendre Miller who can do both, his opportunities get multiplied as well, because now he can be a guy that you can run to those outside lanes or up the middle as well and allow him to utilize his vision and patience and youth to be able to fight through some of that contact in the middle. But without a doubt, first and foremost, this new incoming offense should make things a lot better, a lot more comfortable, and a lot more productive for Alvin Kamara and the rest of the running backs that are going to be with him. Let's take a look at why the slot receiver is super important for the running back when it comes to the wide zone scheme, because you are going to need to expand that offensive line out as much as you can, and a big-bodied slot receiver will help you do that. We got that coming up for you as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints is brought to you by our friends at LinkedIn Jobs. You want to make sure that you're bringing in the right professionals for your job roles. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs is going to make sure that you get those qualified candidates that you want to bring in and interview for free, faster, all of that. They're trying to check all the boxes because LinkedIn isn't just some random job board, right? LinkedIn is helping you find the professionals that you're not going to be able to find anywhere else, who are actively searching for jobs, and even those who aren't. 70% of LinkedIn users don't actually visit other leading job sites. This is the place that you want to be. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional over on LinkedIn today. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, family, along with improved play on the offensive line, improved offensive scheme, the New Orleans Saints will have another big emphasis that will impact their run game and therefore their running backs, and it is the big-bodied slot receiver, or at least they'll have the option to go that route. We appreciate you very much for being here for another episode of Locked On Saints, making us your first listen. Don't forget, tonight on April 17th at 7 p.m., the Locked On NFL mock draft, which I help produce every year. Super excited. I think it's the best one that we've done yet. I'm making trade phone calls. I'm trying to get up. I want 2 first-round picks this year, y'all. Hopefully we can get them. Make sure you come and check out all 6 episodes of the Locked On NFL mock draft tonight at 7 p.m. over on Locked On Sports Today on the YouTube channel, Locked On Sports Today, and as well on the free Amazon Fire TV channels app also. So make sure you come through for that. All right. And I'm also going to do like a quick 10-minute episode with you as well, just kind of getting you ready for the draft right before that mock draft, so we can kind of go over team needs, what I want to do, who I'm targeting, all that, and then you can see how I actually do in the mock draft. Fingers crossed. Let's see how it goes. All right, so the New Orleans Saints could have a little bit of a secret weapon, sneaky. Let's call it a sneaky weapon. It's not a secret, right? This is something that a lot of wide zone offenses do, but I think it's time for the big slot to be back for the New Orleans Saints. We've seen it work with Marcus Colson. We've seen it work with Michael Thomas. New Orleans Saints need not stray far away from that idea, and I don't think that they will. This is something that we've seen in a lot of these wide zone offenses, having that big slot guy in the middle that can help to muck things up and, get his hands dirty and help to block. We saw it with KJ Osborne. We've seen it with Jawan Jennings last year with the San Francisco 49ers and many others. These wide zone offenses love those big bodied guys that can get in the slot and help block as well. And the New Orleans Saints have a couple of candidates for that, especially with their recent acquisitions over the course of this offseason of Cedric Wilson Jr., formerly of the Miami Dolphins and Dallas Cowboys. So similar wide zone systems over there. And then, of course, Equanimeous St. Brown, who, of course, spent time with the Green Bay Packers and the Chicago Bears, who ran their own sort of version of a wide zone offense. But certainly Green Bay ran that similar type of scheme, just the LaFleur version of it. And again, there's always going to be these little things. So with improvement expected on the offensive line by kind of doing things that cater a little bit more to the athleticism of the offensive line. And the reason why I hype up athleticism on the O-line so much is because it's something that always helps you win, right? You can fall back on athleticism. You can fall back on technique. You can't fall back all the time on natural talent or raw, ability and stuff like that. You can't always fall down and just fall back on just having the Maulers mentality. You have to be able to athletically make up for your misgivings. You have to be able to technically make up for your misgivings. And I think that a system like the wide zone system helps offensive lines kind of get that done. So you have that tight ends that will help to block and things like that as well. We talked a little bit about that in yesterday's episode in terms of how the wide zone offense benefits a quarterback, namely Derek Carr, but a quarterback that's in the wide zone system. So for the running backs, what this allows you to do is, remember how we used to always talk with Drew Brees about trying to stretch defenses laterally, right? Horizontally as well as striking vertically. So you're trying to stretch the defenses. You're trying to pull them out from inside the box, and then you can kind of run up the middle, attack the middle of the field, all these other things. One of the things that helps you pull players from outside of the box is having that outside run game. But you want to go outside. And one of the big ways to do that is to have the slot receiver that can work up to the linebacker, the slot safety, get up to the safety, get up to the slot defender who is typically slot defenders, nickel cornerbacks are fairly good run stoppers, run tacklers and run stoppers and all these other things, run support players. So you want to be able to kind of wipe them out of the play. Big slot helps you do that. What you want to be able to do is kind of isolate the corner on the outside, honestly. You kind of want everybody in every other zone to be accounted for. And remember, you're more so focused on blocking an area of the field and the players that enter that than you are necessarily in that zone run scheme trying to block an individual player. But sometimes it's clear who that player is going to be. So climbing up to that next level, getting to that nickel, getting to that slot, getting to that safety, getting to that, weak side coverage linebacker, whatever it might be, having a guy that can go up there and kind of help you clean that out, that's going to help you be able to utilize the opportunity to get you can let the free runner of the cornerback happen all day. I'll take a perimeter corner on Alvin Kamara, or rather, I'll take Alvin Kamara against a perimeter corner every single day, every single play. He's not going to win 100% of those, but getting those opportunities is what you're trying to create in this offense. So you might have situations where you're flowing your play flow of blocking towards the play side so much that you might let a edge rusher run free over on the outside, right? Not necessarily a thing that they would do in the high school versions of the wide zone system and those different iterations and stuff like that, but certainly something you're comfortable doing in the NFL. Now you got to be able to be ready for that if you're the running back and know, okay, this guy's quick coming off the edge. Sometimes those edge rushers can make those plays. But again, I'll take the trailing edge rusher behind my running back, or I'll take my running back against the trailing edge rusher every single time. That's totally fine. So having that big-bodied slot receiver will help you do that. The Saints had that for a little while last year, but the majority of snaps in the slot were taken by Chris Olave. And now Chris Olave is a willing blocker, and he'll go out there and get it done. But I do think that having the big slot there that can win more consistently and allowing, that's the thing you don't want Chris Olave doing. Like, you don't want Chris Olave blocking from the slot. You want him running a route. You want him blazing the field. Like, that's what you want him doing, right? So you need him to be that threat all the time. But having these guys that can line up in the slot, like a Cedric Wilson, run routes from there and block, like a Chris Olave, run routes from there and block, that's where this helps. But the big slot, the 6'3", 6'4" guy that can really help you clean up there, I think is the emphasis. So I don't mean to diminish Chris Olave's value as a blocker, but his value is much more important elsewhere than in protection. So getting some of these other guys that can come in and maybe help challenge there, or maybe A.T. Perry can continue to develop there as well, there's obvious value there. Now, you don't want it to be a complete giveaway, so they have to also be able to work in the passing game. That's why Marcus Colston was so effective. That's why the Saints loved moving Michael Thomas in on the slot. You look at Michael Thomas's career where he played, 50, 60% of his snaps in the slot in some seasons. Last year, only 28.6%. The leading guy percentage-wise of taking snaps out of the slot was Chris Olave at 43.5%. And he took, out of all of his snaps, 252 of those were run blocking snaps. So a very low percentage of the time was he asked to block. So being able to get some of these bigger bodied guys in there that you're comfortable asking to block some, let's call it 40% of the time that they're lined up there or whatever, there's a real value in that. And that, again, helps you stretch the run game laterally, takes everybody that's kind of trying to clutter up the box on the defensive side, moves them outside because they have to be ready for the perimeter run game. And then, boom, you're able to start picking apart on the stretch boot action over the middle of the field because the cavernous gaps that are left in coverage because of trying to line up and be ready for the run on 1st and 10, right? So there's a lot of value in being able to do that. And that's why the slot receiver becomes so important. But all told, the people that it benefits the most, that's the running back, right? The running position, to where you can get out into that area, get that, guy out there, get a pulling, or not even a pulling guard or offensive lineman. You get a fullback in there still to lead the way behind that slot receiver, have him take out the outside linebacker, and then boom, you're off one-on-one with the corner. You'll take that all day long. So that's the reason why I think that the slot receiver and the big slot receiver helps the running back, and again, expands the game for the running backs in the meanwhile. Coming up next, let's take a look at some of the running backs in this year's NFL draft that fit. I've got 3 names for you, the players you don't even have to rush for at the top of this draft that would be big time fits. You've heard their names before, but let's discuss specifically how they fit into the wide zone offense, and they all bring something unique. We got that coming up for you as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints for the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints is brought to you by our friends at Monopoly Go. Look, we've all been there. It's halftime. Your favorite team is down. You're not sure they're going to be able to pull it off. You're feeling low. And then finally you lift your head up and you say to yourself, you know what? It's time to get back into this game. It's time to pull off some bank heist and take as much of my friend's money as I can. Remember, we're talking about Monopoly Go here. We're not actually talking about football. So this is awesome. I absolutely love this game, actually. It's a smash hit mobile game right now. Monopoly Go. It lets you compete with all of your friends and see if you can create the biggest empire. It's the Monopoly that you love, but on your phone, anytime, with tons of new twist leaderboards. You can compare progress with your buddies and all that too. There's just so much to do. My favorite thing to do is, of course, get as much as I can. I play with my family. I get as much property as I can, and then I just start charging everybody every time that they hit. I absolutely love all of it. And of course, you can make your friends bankrupt by smashing their landmarks with wrecking balls. Yeah, this is a wild Monopoly, and it's so much fun. You can even go work with your friends to crack open community chests and tournaments and get extra rewards to help you climb the leaderboard. So get back out there, put your game face on, and download Monopoly Go now for free on the App Store or Google Play. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. Some of the best running backs in this year's NFL draft that will fit a zone run scheme can be had without much fight in this year's draft. Doesn't have to be guys that you're grabbing in the first, second, third, even fourth round. You can find these guys later on in day 3. They can have a big time impact if you want to add more ammunition to that run game in that running back room, and as well as, of course, prepare for your future as well. So we're going to break that down. I'm going to give you some of those names here as we continue on to wrap up today's episode. Appreciate you as always for making us a part of your day. And of course, don't forget, we are your team every day. Right now, we're in the midst of our wide zone breakdown. So we looked at the run game, the passing game, quarterbacks, running backs. Tomorrow, we're looking at wide receivers, tight ends, and then the variety of players that could potentially impact this team right off the bat in the NFL draft that could fit. So I want to start there, or I want to wrap up there in each of these episodes with some of the names to watch in the NFL draft. And then on Friday's episode, we're looking at offensive line, and we'll do the same thing. So who are some of the running backs that make the most sense for the New Orleans Saints when it comes to the zone run? So I'm going to give you the 3 names right off the bat. So Purdue's Tyrone Tracy, who brings an eclectic and very versatile approach to what that wide zone offense can look like. So he's going to contribute from a couple of different ways. So I'm going to save him for last, but I wanted you to know he's at the top of the list for me. Cody Schrader, the running back from Missouri, 5'8", 202 pounds, might be considered a little bit shorter than he needs to be for some folks that want bigger running backs and all that other kind of stuff. I don't care. But the big thing for me is that he has a ton of experience in that wide zone offense, knows it very well. That's what they ran over in Missouri, so it would be a good fit there. And then Isaac Guerendo, the just outstandingly athletic wide receiver, running back coming out of Louisville, who absolutely blew up the combine. So those are the 3 guys that I really want to start off with here. So let's start with Cody Schrader, because I think that Cody Schrader is the guy that is the most plug and play fit to where you could draft him in the 5th round this year, and he could be your starting running back in any other offense in the NFL, as long as you're putting him in that wide zone system. So if you did have that for him, and that would absolutely be a way that you would be able to do it. Now, I don't think you have to worry about him being that guy this year. That's okay, because you've got your starters, but he is somebody that you could bring in. So again, 5'8", 202 pounds, ran just a 4.61 in the 40-yard dash. Doesn't have that sort of like long track speed at all, but man, is he a guy that makes a ton of sense. I saw it was Kintley Platt over on Twitter, who is the person that developed the RAS system, the one where you can measure off of the historical records of positions in their athletics testing and all that. So, he posted the RAS, which isn't great, right? It wasn't a top RAS guy. He's not a top RAS guy or anything like that. But somebody said, if there was an RAS field for dog, then Cody Schrader would be the number 1 running back in this year's class. And I completely believe that. Again, he doesn't have the blazing track speed, but that's okay. He's got the patience, he's got the vision, he's got the IQ, he's got all the things that you need to be able to run that wide zone. And he talks about it so well. He articulates it so well, all that. Talked about it at the combine, was very, very understanding of how it worked. how it all worked. I would say the same thing about Javon Foster, the big offensive tackle that worked with him as well. They both knew that scheme so incredibly well. And I think that there's value in that for a team like the New Orleans Saints that are looking for guys that will be able to come in and have that type of contribution. So when we look at what it is that Cody Schrader was able to do, so here's his official stuff for. So 4.61 for the 40, 5.8, 202, 20 reps on the bench, all of that. So had a pretty lackluster combine performance, but I don't want that to scare anybody away from what it is that he's able to contribute. Over 1,600 rushing yards last year, 14 touchdowns. He found his way to the end zone several times in the run game. His zone run grade on Pro Football Focus came in at 84.6. You can take the PFF scores for what you want on all of that, but that's just one of those things that he was able to do. 51 missed tackles forced last year, 184 zone attempts to 92 man run attempts. So you could see he was very well versed in running all of that. And 851 yards after contact. That's top 15 in the country last year. So really, or top 15 in the draft class this year. So really, really good stuff there for a guy in Cody Schrader. Let's take a look now at Isaac Guerendo, who again blew up the combine big time. He comes in, I believe he's got like a 999 RAS, if I remember correctly, in terms of like the way that he was able to go out there and test. 990 RAS this year. So 6 foot, 221 pounds, so a little bit more size, 4.33 speed, 41.5-inch vert. I mean, you get it, right? Incredibly athletic, fits the bill, but also fits the bill from a zone run grade as well, 84.2 when it comes to his run grade there. Added 31 missed tackles forced, 543 yards after contact, so you can get through all that. 88 zone runs last year, 43 gap scheme runs last year, 810 yards on just 132 attempts. Now, this is important. 11 rushing touchdowns on that too, by the way. But this is important. The New Orleans Saints don't like a lot of wear and tear on their running backs. Isaac Guerendo does not have a lot of wear and tear. He's a height, weight, speed guy for the position. He's got a lot of experience in terms of running and being elusive. Carries an elusive rating of 106.8. That's above average amongst running backs in this year's class. Gets a lot of yards after contact as well, 4.11, really good. Remember, guys like Alvin Kamara and Jamaal Williams both fell under 2 yards after contact per attempt last year. So getting a guy that can fight through contact and pick up additional yards, he's a guy that can get that done for you. So you can look at the fact that he doesn't have a lot of wear and tear, still has a ton of tread left on the tires, has experience in the system, and is young. And so that gives you a really good opportunity to be able to draft a guy like that can then come in and continue beyond your current running back room and develop and be a guy for you for your future. That is something New Orleans Saints have to start wondering about and have to start paying attention to now. So a guy like Isaac Guerendo is one that I absolutely will co-sign over and over and over again. Now let me get to Tyrone Tracy, and I'll spend a little bit of time on here with Tyrone Tracy. If you've seen any mock draft Monday, you know that Tyrone Tracy is one of my favorite prospects in this year's class. And the thing that I like most about him is not his 5'11" size. It's not his 208-pound frame. Both of those numbers are good, by the way. It's not his 4.48 speed, which I love. It's not his 40-inch vertical, which shows you that he's got explosion. I also love that. It's the fact that he's a former wide receiver. And if you're looking for a guy that's going to be able to come in and allow you to be able to build some unpredictability to your offense, which I think is one of the biggest complaints that you can have about the New Orleans Saints offense, particularly over the last 2 years, is the predictability. Runs on 2nd and 10 after incomplete passes, screen pass, not even screen passes, but targeting the sticks beyond, all these other things. Like there was so many of these things that were super predictable for the New Orleans Saints 2023, 2022 on their offensive side. Here's a guy that can run, that can catch, that can run the zone scheme, that can be a movement player before the snap, that can confuse the heck out of defenses in terms of how it is that you want to utilize them, and can carry the torch beyond as well, just like we were talking about Isaac Guerendo. We're talking about a 24-year-old running back here. This is a guy that has a future in the NFL and can be a guy that you can really, really build around. So he's one of the Deebo Samuel role-fitting players in this year's draft. Just the role-fitting players, not anything like that. I'm not comparing him immediately to Deebo Samuel, but if you wanted to have that role in your offense, Tyrone Tracy is absolutely a guy that can get that done. So those are my 3 top guys. They're not the only ones. There's a lot of running backs in this year's class that would be great when it comes to the zone run scheme. So a lot for this New Orleans Saints team to take a look at. I believe Dylan Laube is another one of those guys out of New Hampshire, all that. So really, really good stuff in terms of how this should impact the New Orleans Saints run game. And listen, if it doesn't do what it's supposed to do, there are major issues that will need to be addressed at the end of the season. I'm not trying to put the bad juju out there, but if there's any reason to bring in a wide zone offense, it's because you want your run game to cook. And if you can't cook with your run game, you got a lot of bad ingredients somewhere. And so there would be a lot of overhaul if this doesn't work out in 2025. There's no doubt about that. All right. Tomorrow, wide receivers, tight ends. We appreciate you very much for making this your first listen of the day. Every day, I'm going to go catch me a Pelicans play-in tournament game. If you want to find out how it goes, if you didn't get a chance to watch it, or you want to hear more after it's all done, Locked On Pelicans with Jake Madison is the place to be. So make sure you go and make him your second listen today to figure out what happened between the Pelicans and the Lakers and what's next for the Pelicans playoffs or otherwise. Appreciate you as always, making Locked On Saints part of your day, part of your routine, for saying yes to me and the show. As always, if you see me, please say hi. And if you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow me on your favorite social media at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing. Let me know how you're living. Let me know how you're momming them. And trust Who Dat Nation, I'll holla at you.